Sorry, the mixer switched positions between the mic and the desktop audio, and I had turned the wrong one on. Anyway, long story short, Windows pushed an update through on me. Um, there was never any warning that it was coming. Never had any kind of, hey, you want to push this update? None of that. It just did it all of a sudden. So that's why it took so long to come back up. I had to wait for it to cycle. Anyway, we did lose a couple people, and I very much apologize for the inconvenience. It couldn't be helped. Now, here's the thing. I think I know where it froze up. So I'm backing up a little bit, um, and I'll cover the ground I was at before just to make sure I at least start over again at a point where we'll all know where we had left off. Um, so back to the story at hand. Oh, I will say, also it gave me a chance to make some Bigelow mint tea with honey because I really did overdrive my throat the first few pages, and I was paying for it, but now I think I'll be fine. Okay, well, thank you all for your attention again, and here we go. Comey's description of his choice as being between two doors, one labeled Speak and one labeled Conceal, was a false dichotomy. The two doors were actually labeled Follow Policy Practice and Depart from Policy Practice. Although we acknowledge that Comey faced a difficult situation with unattractive choices, in proceeding as he did, we concluded that Comey made a serious error of judgment. Department and FBI leadership discussions. On October 27th, Comey instructed his Chief of Staff, James Rybecki, to reach out to the department about his plan to notify Congress. As we describe in Chapter 10 of our report, Comey told the OIG that he decided to ask Rybecki to inform the department rather than to contact Lynch or Yates directly because he did not, quote-unquote, want to jam them, and I wanted to offer them... Oops. Sorry about that. He decided to ask Rybecki to inform the department rather than to contact Lynch or Yates directly because he did not, quote-unquote, want to jam them, and I wanted to offer them the opportunity to think about it and decide whether they wanted to be engaged on it. Rybecki and Axelrod spoke on the afternoon of October 27th and had a series of phone calls the rest of the day. Rybecki told Axelrod that Comey believed he had an obligation to notify Congress about the laptop in order to correct the misimpression that the Midyear investigation was closed. Lynch, Yates, Axelrod, and their staffs had several discussions that same day as to whether Lynch or Yates should call Comey directly, but said they ultimately decided to have Axelrod communicate, quote-unquote, the strong view that neither the DAG nor AG felt this letter should go out. Yates told us they were concerned that direct contact with Comey would be perceived as strong-arming him, and that based on her experience with Comey, he was likely to push back hard against input from Lynch or her, especially if accepting their input meant that he had to go back to his staff and explain that he was reversing his decision. They were afraid of Comey. She said that she viewed Rybecki as the person they needed to convince if they wanted to change Comey's mind. Accordingly, Axelrod informed Rybecki on October 27 of the department's strong opposition to Comey's plan to send a letter. Rybecki reported to Comey that the department recommended against the congressional notification and thought it was a bad idea. Although Comey told us that he would not have sent the letter if Lynch or Yates had told him not to do so, he said he viewed their response as only a recommendation and interpreted their lack of direct engagement as saying, basically, it's up to you. I honestly thought they were taking a kind of cowardly way out. The following day, October 28, Comey sent a letter to Congress stating in part that the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the Midyear investigation. Comey, Lynch, and Yates faced difficult choices in late October 2016. However, we found it extraordinary that Comey assessed that it was best that the FBI director not speak directly with the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General about how best to navigate this most important decision and mitigate the resulting harms, and that Comey's decision resulted in the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General concluding that it would be counterproductive to speak directly with the FBI director. Excuse me a second. Be gone with you. We believe that open and candid communication among leaders in the department and its components is essential for the effective functioning of the department. Text and instant messages, use of personal email, and alleged improper disclosures of non-public information. Text messages and instant messages. As we describe in Chapter 12 during our review, we identified text messages and instant messages sent on FBI mobile devices or computer systems by 5 FBI employees who were assigned to the Midyear investigation. These included text messages exchanged between Strzok and Page, instant messages exchanged between Agent 1, who was one of the 4 Midyear case agents, and Agent 5, who was a member of the filter team, and instant messages sent by FBI Attorney 2, who was assigned to the Midyear investigation. I sense redactions. The text messages and instant messages sent by these employees included statements of hostility towards then-candidate Trump and statements of support for candidate Clinton, and several appeared to mix political opinions with discussions about the Midyear investigation. We found that the conduct of these 5 FBI employees brought discredit to themselves and sowed doubt about the FBI's handling of the Midyear investigation and impacted the reputation of the FBI. Although our review did not find documentary or testimonial evidence directly connecting these political views with these employees expressed in their text messages and instant messages to the specific investigative decisions we reviewed in Chapter 5, the conduct by these employees cast a cloud over the FBI Midyear investigation and sowed doubt the FBI's work on and its handling of the Midyear investigation. Moreover, the damage caused by their actions extends far beyond the scope of the Midyear investigation and goes to the heart of the FBI's reputation for neutral fact-finding and political independence. We were deeply troubled by text messages exchanged between Strzok and Page that potentially indicated or created the appearance that investigative decisions were impacted by bias or improper considerations. Most of the text messages raising such questions pertained to the Russia investigation, which was not a part of this review. But there will be one. Nonetheless, when one senior FBI official, Strzok, who was helping to lead the Russia investigation at the time, conveys in a text message to another senior FBI official, Page, no, he won't, we'll stop it, in response to her question, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? It is not only indicative of a biased state of mind, but, even more seriously, implies a willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidate's electoral prospects. This is antithetical to the core values of the FBI and the Department of Justice. We do not question that the FBI employees who sent these messages are entitled to their own political views. However, we believe using FBI devices to send the messages discussed in Chapter 12, particularly the messages that intermix work-related discussions with political commentary, potentially implicate provisions in the FBI's offense code and penalty guidelines. At a minimum, we found that the employees' use of FBI systems and devices to send the identified messages demonstrated extremely poor judgment and a gross lack of professionalism. We therefore refer this information to the FBI for its handling and consideration of whether the messages sent by the 5 employees listed above violated the FBI's offense code of conduct. Well, not according to, Not according to the venerated head of the Russian probe, Mueller, because he has Strzok and Page still on the payroll after only demoting them from the Russia investigation. So we'll see if they carry through on this any further. Use of personal email. We also describe in Chapter 12, we learned during the course of our review that Comey, Strzok, and Page used their personal email accounts to conduct FBI business. Get out of here. We identified numerous instances in which Comey used a personal email account to conduct unclassified FBI business. We found that, given the absence of exigent circumstances and the frequency with which the use of personal email occurred, Comey's use of a personal email account for unclassified FBI business to be inconsistent with department policy. That's Comey, Mr. Inconsistent. We found that Strzok used his personal email accounts for official government business on several occasions, including forwarding an email from his FBI account to his personal email account about the proposed search warrant the Midyear team was seeking on the Wiener laptop. This email included a draft of the search warrant affidavit, which contained information from the Wiener investigation that appears to have been under seal at the time in the Southern District of New York, and information obtained pursuant to a grand jury subpoena issued in the Eastern District of Virginia in the Midyear investigation. We refer to the FBI the issue of whether Strzok's use of personal email accounts violated FBI and department policies. That ought to be good. Finally, when questioned, Page also told us that she used personal email for work-related matters at times. She stated that she and Strzok sometimes used these forums for work-related discussions due to the technical limitations of FBI-issued phones. Page left the FBI on May 4, 2018. I forgot that. I'm sorry. I said earlier that Mueller hadn't fired her. I forgot that she had left. Again, my apologies. I'm sure she wasn't told, look, you can retire or you can get bumped, like McCabe. Improper disclosure of non-public information. As we also describe in Chapter 12, among the issues we reviewed were allegations that department and FBI employees improperly disclosed non-public information regarding the Midyear investigation. Although FBI policy strictly limits the employees who are authorized to speak to the media, we found that this policy appeared to be widely ignored during the period we reviewed. We identified numerous FBI employees at all levels of the organization and with no official reason to be in contact with the media who were nevertheless in frequent contact with reporters. Attached to this report, as attachments E and F, are two link charts that reflect the volume of communication that we identified between FBI employees and media representatives in April, May, and October 2016. We have profound concerns about the volume and extent of unauthorized media contacts by FBI personnel that we have uncovered during our review. In addition, we identified instances where FBI employees improperly received benefits from reporters. Oh boy. Including tickets to sporting events, golfing outings, drinks and meals, and admittance to non-public social events. We will separately report on those investigations as they are concluded, consistent with the Inspector General Act and other applicable federal statutes and OIG policy. Oh, the hammer's going to come down. And I wonder who those reporters were. Will those be redacted or will those be included in that report? I can't wait to see what outlets are included in that. The harm caused by leaks, fear of potential leaks, and a culture of unauthorized media contacts is illustrated in chapters 10 and 11 of our report, where we detailed the fact that these issues influenced FBI officials who were advising Comey on consequential investigative decisions in October 2016. The FBI updated its media policy in November 2017, restating its strict guidelines concerning media contacts and identifying who is required to obtain authority before engaging members of the media, and when and where to report media contact. We do not believe the problem is with the FBI's policy, which we found to be clear and unambiguous. Rather, we concluded that these leaks highlight the need to change what appears to be a cultural attitude among many in the organization. We're supposed to respect the FBI. We're supposed to trust it implicitly. Everyone from top to bottom are good people. This said that all levels were engaged in that activity. There are good FBI agents, sure. There are good DOJ employees, sure. But it seems like, as it just said, there was an atmosphere of lawlessness, if I may use that word. Recusal issues. Former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. As we describe in Chapter 13, in 2015, McCabe's spouse, Dr. Jill McCabe, ran for a Virginia State Senate seat. During the campaign, sorry, I thought I'd froze for a second. During the campaign, Dr. McCabe's campaign committee received substantial monetary and in-kind contributions totaling $675,288, or approximately 40% of the total contributions raised by Dr. McCabe for her state Senate campaign from then-Governor McAuliffe's Political Action Committee and from the Virginia Democratic Party. Oh, hush, Harley. You may see a cat walk through very quickly. That's everyone say hello to Harley. Harley, say hello to everyone. In addition, on June 26, 2015, Hillary Clinton was the featured speaker at a fundraiser in Virginia. Oh, hey, Ray. Well, I'm glad you got here. We were shut down for a few minutes because of Windows pushing an update, but that live stream will be on the channel as well as this section of it. And I believe Harley, get off the keyboard. I believe I backed up far enough to cover the gap. But welcome, sir. At the time his wife sought to run for state senate, McCabe was the assistant director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office, WFO, and sought ethics advice from FBI ethics officials and attorneys. We found that FBI ethics officials and attorneys did not fully appreciate the potential significant implications to McCabe and the FBI from campaign donations to Dr. McCabe's campaign. The FBI did not implement any review of campaign donations to assess potential conflicts or appearance issues that could arise from the donations. On this issue, we believe McCabe did what he was supposed to do by notifying those responsible in FBI for ethics issues and seeking their guidance. Okay, so again, now this time McCabe did the right thing, but those above him didn't follow through the way they should have. I shouldn't say above, those in the ethics department. I can't say they're above him necessarily. After McCabe became FBI Deputy Director in February 2016, McCabe had an active role in the supervision of the Midyear investigation and oversight of the Clinton Foundation investigation until he recused himself from these investigations on November 1st, 2016. Ray, the Midyear investigation is in reference to the Hillary Clinton email investigation by the FBI and the DOJ, just so you know. That's going to come up a lot. McCabe voluntarily recused himself on November 1st at Comey's urging as the result of an October 23rd article in the Wall Street Journal identifying the substantial donations from McAuliffe's PAC and the Virginia Democratic Party to Dr. McCabe. So he got caught. With respect to these investigations, we agreed with the FBI's chief ethics official that McCabe was not at any time required to recuse under the relevant authorities. However, voluntary recusal is always permissible with the approval of a supervisor or ethics official, which is what McCabe did on November 1st. Had the FBI put in place a system for reviewing campaign donations to Dr. McCabe, which were public under Virginia law, the sizable donations from McAuliffe's PAC and the Virginia Democratic Party might have triggered prior consideration of the very appearance concerns raised in the October 23rd Wall Street Journal article. Finally, we also found that McCabe did not fully comply with this recusal in a few instances related to the Clinton Foundation investigation. Former Assistant Attorney General Peter Kadzik, in Chapter 14, we found that Kadzik demonstrated poor judgment by failing to recuse himself from Clinton-related matters under federal ethics regulations prior to November 2nd, 2016. Kadzik did not recognize the appearance of a conflict that he created when he initiated an effort to obtain employment for his son with the Clinton campaign while participating in department discussions and communications about Clinton-related matters. Oh, boy. Wow. Kadzik also created an appearance of a conflict when he sent the chairman of the Clinton campaign and a longtime friend, John Podesta, the heads-up email that included the schedule for the release of former Secretary Clinton's emails proposed to the court in a FOIA litigation without knowing whether the information had yet been filed and made public. His willingness to do so raised a reasonable question about his ability to act impartially on Clinton-related matters in connection with his official duties. Additionally, although department leadership determined that Kadzik should be recused from Clinton-related matters upon learning of his heads-up email to Podesta, we found that Kadzik failed to strictly adhere to this recusal. What is it with these people? Lastly, because the government information in the heads-up email had in fact been released publicly, we did not find that Kadzik released non-public information or misused his official position. So on a technicality, he lucked out. FBI records vault Twitter announcements. As we describe in Chapter 15, on November 1st, 2016, in response to multiple FOIA requests, the FBI Records Management Division posted records to the FBI Records Vault, a page on the FBI's public website concerning the William J. Clinton Foundation. The @FBI Records Vault Twitter account announced this posting later the same day. We concluded that these requests were processed according to RMD's internal procedures like other similarly sized requests, and found no evidence that the FOIA response was expedited or delayed in order to impact the 2016 presidential election. We also found no evidence that improper political considerations influenced the FBI's use of the Twitter account to publicize the release. Recommendations. Our report makes 9 recommendations to the Department and the FBI to assist them in addressing the issues that we identified in this review. We recommend that the Department and the FBI consider developing guidance that identifies the risks associated with and alternatives to permitting a witness to attend a voluntary interview of another witness, including the witness's capacity as counsel. We recommend that the Department consider making explicit that, except in situations where the law requires or permits disclosure, an investigating agency cannot publicly announce its recommended charging decision prior to consulting with the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, U.S. Attorney, or his or her designee, and cannot proceed without the approval of one of these officials. We recommend that the Department and the FBI consider adopting a policy addressing the appropriateness of department employees discussing the conduct of uncharged individuals in public statements. We recommend that the Department consider providing guidance to agents and prosecutors concerning the taking of overt investigative steps, indictments, public announcements, or other actions that could impact an election. We recommend that the Office of the Deputy Attorney General take steps to improve the retention and monitoring of text messages department-wide. We recommend that the FBI add a warning banner to all of the FBI's mobile phones and devices in order to further notify users that they have no reasonable expectation of privacy. I don't understand how that's just not a given. You're a government employee. It's a government device. You're only supposed to use it for government business. We recommend that the FBI consider A, assessing whether it has provided adequate training to employees about the proper use of text messages and instant messages, including any related discovery obligations, and B, providing the additional guidance about the allowable uses of FBI devices for any non-governmental purpose, including guidance about the use of FBI devices for political considerations. We recommend that the FBI consider whether A, it is appropriately educating employees about both its media contact policy and the department's ethics rules pertaining to the acceptance of gifts, and B, its disciplinary provisions and penalties are sufficient to deter such improper conduct. We recommend that department ethics officials include the review of campaign donations for possible conflict issues when department employees or their spouses run for public office. Okay. So that's the summary. Now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. And I'll probably read until either my throat starts to give out or I run out of tea, and then we'll take a break. Now, if anyone needs to take a break before then, put it in the chat. And if I miss it, just keep putting it in there until I see it. I don't reference that side of the screen very often, but I will be more than happy to be flexible with everyone. And we will take 10-minute breaks. Again, I hope that's sufficient for everyone. Okay, let's get to chapter 1. I think I better page down. Oh, we got a lot to go, don't we? Woohoo! This is going to be fun. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, Introduction. Background. The Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General, undertook this review of various actions by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department in connection with the investigation into the use of a private email server by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Clinton served as Secretary of State from January 21, 2009 until February 1, 2013, and during that time used private email servers hosting the @clintonemail.com domain to conduct official Department of State business. In 2014, in response to a request from the State Department to Clinton for copies of any federal records in her possession, such as emails sent or received on a personal email account while serving as Secretary of State, Clinton produced to the State Department 30,490 emails from her private server that her attorneys determined were work-related. Clinton and her attorneys did not produce to the State Department approximately 31,830 emails because, they stated, they were personal in nature, and these emails subsequently were deleted from the laptop computers that the attorneys used to review them. In 2015, at the State Department's request, the Office of the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community reviewed emails from Clinton's private email server that she had produced to the State Department and identified a potential compromise of classified information. The ICIG subsequently referred this information to the FBI. The FBI opened an investigation known as Midyear Exam, MYE or Midyear, into the storage and transmission of classified information on Clinton's unclassified private servers in July 2015. Over the course of the next year, FBI agents and analysts and department prosecutors conducted the investigation. Their activities included obtaining and analyzing servers and devices used by Clinton, contents of private email accounts for certain senior aides, and computers and email accounts used to back up, process, or transfer Clinton emails. The investigative team interviewed numerous witnesses, including current and former State Department employees. On June 27, 2016, while the mid-year investigation was nearing completion, then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton had an unscheduled meeting while their planes were parked on the tarmac at Phoenix's Sky Harbor Airport. Okay, I don't remember why Lynch was there, but how is it that Clinton wound up at Sky Harbor at the same time. Sky Harbor is a business field. It's used by corporate jets because the main airport at Phoenix is busy with commercial traffic, and it's also cheaper to land at Sky Harbor. But what was Bill doing there? I don't think that's ever been properly explained. Former President Clinton boarded Lynch's plane, and Lynch's husband, and the former president met for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. Now, they're on the tarmac in Phoenix. You're going to have the engines running, or I'm sorry, you're going to have the auxiliary power unit running in order to keep the AC running. And the APU can be fairly loud on some of these jets. The conversation wouldn't have been necessarily at the level I'm talking right now. I'm not saying that's a fact, but I've been around these kind of aircraft, and I know it can be disconcerting. Following the meeting, Lynch publicly denied having any conversation about the Midyear investigation or any other substantive matter pending before the department. Nevertheless, the meeting created significant controversy. On July 1st, 2016, Lynch publicly announced that she would accept the recommendation of the Midyear investigative and prosecutorial team regarding whether to charge former Secretary Clinton. The following day, Saturday, July 2nd, 2016, the FBI and department prosecutors interviewed former Secretary Clinton at the FBI's headquarters building. Then, on July 5th, 2016, without coordinating with the department and with very brief notice to it, then FBI Director James Comey publicly delivered a statement that criticized Clinton, characterized her and her senior aides as extremely careless, quote unquote, in their handling of classified information, and asserted that it was possible hostile actors gained access to Clinton's personal email account. Comey concluded, however, that the investigation should be closed because, quote, no reasonable prosecutor, unquote, would prosecute Clinton or others, citing the strength of the evidence and the lack of precedent for bringing a case on these facts. The following day, July 6, 2016, Lynch was briefed by the prosecutors and formally accepted their recommendation to decline prosecution. On October 28, 2016, 11 days before the presidential election, Comey sent a letter to Congress announcing the discovery of emails that appeared to be pertinent to the Midyear investigation. Comey's letter was referring to the FBI's discovery of a large quantity of emails during the search of a laptop computer obtained in an unrelated investigation of Anthony Weiner, the husband of Clinton's former deputy, chief of staff, and personal assistant, Huma Abedin. The FBI obtained a search warrant to review the emails 2 days later on October 30th, 2016. Now remember, they had this laptop and identified those emails on September 28th. Over the next 6 days, the FBI processed and reviewed a large volume of emails. On November 6, 2016, 2 days before the election, Comey sent a second letter to Congress stating that the review of the emails on the laptop had not changed the FBI's earlier conclusions with respect to Clinton. The OIG initiated this review on January 12, 2017, in response to requests from numerous chairmen and ranking members of congressional oversight committees, various organizations, and members of the public to investigate various decisions made in the Midyear investigation. The OIG announced that it would review the following issues: allegations that department or FBI policies or procedures were not followed in connection with or in actions leading up to or related to Comey's public announcement on July 5, 2016, and Comey's letters to Congress on October 28 and November 6, 2016, and that certain underlying investigative decisions were based on improper considerations. Allegations that then FBI Director Andrew McCabe should have been recused from participating in certain investigative matters. Allegations that then Assistant Attorney General for the Department's Office of Legislative Affairs, Peter Kadzik, improperly disclosed non-public information to the Clinton campaign and or should have been recused from participating in certain matters. Allegations that Department and FBI employees improperly disclosed non-public information and allegations that decisions regarding the timing of the FBI's release of certain FOIA documents on October 30th and November 1st, 2016, and the use of a Twitter account to publicize the same were influenced by improper considerations. The OIG announcement added that, quote, if circumstances warrant, the OIG will consider including other issues that may arise during the course of the review, unquote. One such issue that the OIG added to the scope of this review arose from the discovery of text messages and instant messages between some FBI employees on the investigative team conducted using FBI mobile devices and computers that statements of support for then-candidate Clinton, that expressed statements of hostility towards then-candidate Donald Trump and statements of support for then-candidate Clinton, as well as comments about the handling of the Midyear investigation. We addressed whether these communications evidencing a potential bias affected investigative decisions in the Midyear investigation. I'm finding I can read a lot longer with this tea than I can with coffee. Interesting. This review is separate from the review the OIG announced on March 28, 2018, concerning the Department's and FBI's compliance with legal requirements and with applicable Department and FBI policies and procedures in applications filed with the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which we call the FISA Court, relating to a certain U.S. person. We will issue a separate report relating to those issues when our investigative work is complete at a future date. Yes. Methodology. During the course of this investigation, the OIG interviewed more than 100 witnesses, several on more than one occasion. These included former Director Comey, former AG Lynch, former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, members of the former AG and DAG staffs, FBI agents and supervisors, and department attorneys and supervisors who conducted the Midyear investigation, personnel from the FBI's New York field office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, involved in the Anthony Weiner investigation, former and current members of the FBI senior executive leadership, and former President Clinton. That's a pretty exhaustive list. All of the former department and FBI officials we contacted to request interviews related to the Midyear investigation agreed to be interviewed. However, 2 witnesses with whom we requested interviews in connection with our review of whether Peter Kadzik, the former Assistant Attorney General for the Department's Office of Legislative Affairs, should have been recused from certain matters, declined our request for an interview, or were unable to schedule an interview. Oh, I just don't have the time. Maybe next year. We also reviewed significantly more than 1.2 million documents. Among these were FBI documents from the Midyear investigation, including electronic communications and interview reports, agent notes from witness interviews, draft and final versions of the letterhead memorandum, summarizing the Midyear investigation, drafts of Comey's public statements and letters to Congress, and contemporaneous notes from agents and supervisors involved in meetings about the statement and letters to Congress. We also obtained documents from prosecutors and supervisors in the Department's National Security Division, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia, as well as the Office of the Deputy Attorney General and the Office of the Attorney General. Importantly, among these documents were contemporaneous notes from the prosecutors and supervisors involved in the investigation. In connection with our efforts to investigate the circumstances surrounding the FBI's discovery of Midyear-related emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop computer and Comey's notification to Congress on October 28, 2016, we obtained documents from NYO and SDNY personnel. These documents included forensic logs from processing of the Weiner laptop by New York Office Computer Analysis and Recovery Team personnel, New York Office and Southern District in New York communications about the discovery of the emails, and other documents. We obtained communications between and among agents, prosecutors, supervisors, and FBI and department officials to understand what happened during the investigation and identify the contemporaneous factors considered in making investigative decisions. In addition to a large volume of emails, we obtained and reviewed well in excess of 100,000 text messages. I'm just going to say texts if I can do that. 100,000 texts and instant messages to or from FBI personnel who worked on the investigation. Our review also included the examination of highly classified information. We were given broad access to relevant materials by the Department and the FBI, including the sensitive, compartmented information discussed in the classified appendix to this report, and emails and instant messages from both the FBI's top secret SciNet system and the secret FBI net system. Several of the State Department emails between Secretary Clinton and her staff from the underlying mid-year investigation included information relevant to a tightly held Special Actions program, and we did not seek or obtain the required read-ins for that program. Based on our review of emails containing redacted SAP and the FBI's explanation of the program, we determined that this information was not needed for us to make the findings in this report. If you want some really, really in-depth explanations of this part of the investigation, or this part of the, as I consider it, theft of emails from the State Department to Hillary's private server, go to H.A. Goodman's web YouTube site. That's h.a.goodman, Goodman, and go to any of his recent videos and look in the description. He'll have the links to his books. One is, let's see, But Her Top Secret Emails, and the other is But Her Deleted Emails. They're on Amazon in Kindle form right now. Finally, and as discussed in more detail below, our review included information obtained in the mid-year investigation and the Anthony Weiner child exploitation investigation pursuant to grand jury subpoenas and sealed search warrants. At the Inspector General's request, the Department sought court orders authorizing the release of sealed information that does not otherwise affect individual privacy interests so that we can include relevant information in this report. This information is included in the report where appropriate. Analytical construct. As noted above, the OIG undertook this review to determine, among other things, whether, quote, certain investigative decisions taken in connection with the mid-year investigation were based on improper considerations, unquote, including political bias or concerns for personal gain. In conducting this portion of our review, it was necessary to select particular investigative decisions for focused attention. It would not have been possible to recreate and analyze every decision made in a year-long complex investigation. We therefore identified particular case decisions or other incidents which were the subject of controversy. These included the use of consent agreements and voluntary interviews to obtain evidence, grants of immunity to witnesses, and the decision to allow Cheryl Mills and Heather Samuelson, two of former Secretary Clinton's attorneys, to attend her interview. As I remember, they weren't just her attorneys, they were people involved in the email scandal. During our investigation, we looked for direct evidence of improper considerations, such as contemporaneous statements in emails, memoranda, or other documents explicitly linking political or other improper considerations to specific investigative decisions. We likewise questioned witnesses about whether they had direct evidence of improper considerations affecting decision-making. As noted above, we reviewed significantly more than 1.2 million emails, texts, and internal documents relating to the investigation, and interviewed more than 100 witnesses who were involved in the matter. We also analyzed the justifications offered for the investigative decisions we selected for focused review, including contemporaneous justifications and those offered after the fact, to determine whether they were a pretext for improper but unstated considerations. We conducted this assessment with the appreciation for the fact that Department and FBI officials were required to make numerous decisions involving complex matters daily under the unusual pressures and challenges present in the mid-year investigation. In the January 12, 2017 memorandum announcing this review, we stated, quote, "Our review will not substitute the OIG's judgment for the judgments made by the FBI or the Department regarding the substantive merits of investigative or prosecutive decisions." I'd never seen that word before. Unquote. Consistent with this statement, we do not criticize particular decisions or infer that they were influenced by improper considerations, merely because we might have recommended a different investigative strategy or tactic based on the facts learned during our investigation. The question we considered was not whether a particular investigative decision was perfect or ideal, or one that we believed could have been handled more effectively, but whether the circumstances surrounding the decision indicated that it was based on considerations other than the merits of the investigation. If the explanations that we were given for a particular decision were consistent with a rational investigative strategy and not unreasonable, we did not conclude that the decision was based on improper considerations in the absence of evidence to the contrary. We took this approach because our role as an OIG is not to second-guess valid discretionary judgments made during the course of such an investigation, and this approach is consistent with the OIG's handling of such questions in past reviews. I think a lot of people were hoping for a more decisive approach, but that's their policy. We have to accept it. I'm not going to bitch about it. We applied this same standard as we reviewed and considered the department's declination decision, the letterhead memorandum summarizing the investigation, and contemporaneous emails and notes reflecting analysis and discussion of legal research conducted by the prosecutors. Structure of the report. Okay, I don't think we need to read that. Chapter 2, Applicable Laws and Department Policies. Let's take a quick glance at this. Yeah, this is all technical. I don't think we need this. Wait, did I pass a page? Nope. Tra-la-la-la-la-la. There we go. All right. Chapter 3, Overview of the Midyear Investigation. In this chapter, we provide an overview of the midyear investigation. More specifically, we describe the referral and opening of the investigation, the staffing of the investigation by the department and the FBI, and the investigative strategy. All right, let's get into the bones of this. Clinton's use of private email servers. Hillary Clinton served as Secretary of State from January 21st, 2009 until February 1st, 2013. Just long enough to build up body of work like destroying Libya. Good girl. During that time, she used private email servers hosting the at clintonemail.com domain to conduct official State Department business. According to FBI documents, former Secretary Clinton and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, had a private email server in their house in Chappaqua, New York, beginning in approximately 2008, before Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, for use by former President Clinton's staff. Former Secretary Clinton told the FBI that in or around January 2009, she directed aides to create the clintonemail.com account, and that this was done as a matter of convenience. I may be jumping ahead here, but you do not just transfer State Department emails to a private server. That is on a specific and controlled network. And you can't just plug into it with a private email account. It doesn't work that way. you have to actively and physically transfer those documents, as near as I understand. There may have been a workaround, but the guy who did that declined to be questioned. I wonder why. According to the FBI letterhead memorandum summarizing the mid-year investigation, Clinton used her clintonemail.com account and personal mobile devices linked to that account for both personal and official business throughout her tenure as Secretary of State. The LHM states that Clinton decided to use a personal device to avoid carrying multiple devices. Grandma don't know how to use technology. Clinton never personally used an official State Department email account or State Department issued handheld device during her tenure, although there were official State Department email accounts from which emails were sent on her behalf, completely against the government retention records laws. Production of emails from the private email service to the State Department and subsequent deletion of emails by Clinton staff. On September 11 and 12, 2012, terrorists attacked the U.S. temporary mission facility and a Central Intelligence Agency annex in Benghazi, Libya, killing 4 Americans. On May 8, 2014, the U.S. House Select Committee on Benghazi was established to investigate the Benghazi attack and thereafter sought documents from the State Department as part of its investigation. I hope y'all don't mind. I'm just going to skip the footnotes. Otherwise, it'll take forever. If you feel that's wrong, try to put it in the chat. Let me know. But for now, I'm going to just ignore them. In the summer of 2014, State Department officials contacted Cheryl Mills, who had served as former Secretary Clinton's chief of staff and counselor, concerning the State Department's inability to locate Clinton's and other former secretaries' emails to respond to congressional requests. Mills later told the FBI that she suggested that the State Department officials search State Department systems for Clinton's clintonemail.com email address. In addition, Mills told the FBI that State Department officials requested that she produce former Secretary Clinton's emails and advised her that it was Clinton's or Mills' quote-unquote obligation to filter out personal emails from what was provided to State. Former Secretary Clinton asked Mills and Clinton's personal attorney, David Kendall, to oversee the process of providing her emails to the State Department. In late summer 2014, Mills contacted Paul Gambetta, an employee of the company that administered Clinton's private server at the time, and requested that he transfer copies of Clinton's emails onto Mills' laptop and a laptop belonging to Heather Samuelson, a lawyer who had served in the State Department as Secretary Clinton's White House liaison. Mills, Samuelson, and Kendall then developed a methodology for Samuelson to cull former Secretary Clinton's work-related emails from her personal emails to produce her work-related emails to the State Department. So you're allowing someone under investigation to determine what evidence they're going to turn over to you. Good plan. I'm sorry, it wasn't a criminal investigation at the time. I take that back. In October and November 2014, the State Department sent letters to 4 former Secretaries of State, including Clinton, requesting that they, quote-unquote, make available copies of any federal records in their possession, such as emails sent or received on a personal email account while serving as Secretary of State. In December 2014, former Secretary Clinton produced to the State Department from her personal email account approximately 55,000 hard copy pages representing approximately 30,000 emails that she believed related to official business. After receiving these documents, why couldn't she have transmitted them electronically? Why would she print them out? I'll tell you why, to bog down the investigation. It's a lot easier to search electronic data than it is to go by a page, word by word. After receiving these documents, the State Department, in addition to responding to the House Benghazi Committee's document request, reviewed Clinton's emails for potential public release in response to FOIA requests. As described in Chapter 5, Mills, Samuelson, and Gambetta told the FBI that in late 2014 or early 2015, Mills and Samuelson asked Gambetta to remove former Secretary Clinton's emails from their laptops. Gambetta then used the commercial software BITCHUTE to permanently remove or wipe former Secretary Clinton's emails from Mills and Samuelson's laptops. Yeah. Mills told the FBI that at some point between November 2014 and January 2015, Clinton decided she no longer wished to retain on her server emails that were older than 60 days, and Mills instructed Gambetta to change Clinton's email retention policy accordingly. Gambetta, however, failed to do so until late March 2015. On March 3, 2015, the House Benghazi Committee sent preservation orders requiring former Secretary Clinton to preserve emails on her servers. As described in more detail in Chapter 5, Gambetta told the FBI that later in March 2015, he realized that he had neglected to make the change to former Secretary Clinton's email retention policy earlier that year and had an, quote, oh shit, unquote moment, and without consulting Mills, used BITCHUTE to permanently remove Clinton emails from her server. Obstruction of justice much? These included emails that had been transferred from a prior server. According to FBI documents, former Secretary Clinton's attorneys advised Gambetta about the congressional preservation order before he made the deletions. As a result of Gambetta's actions, 31,830 emails that former Secretary Clinton's attorneys had deemed personal in nature were deleted from 3 locations on which they had previously been stored: Mills and Samuelson's laptops and the Clinton server. And let's remember, Mills and Samuelson sat in on Hillary's interview so they could avoid being interviewed themselves. State Department Inspector General and ICIG report of Clinton's emails and subsequent 811 referral. On March 12, 2015, 3 members of Congress requested that the State Department Inspector General conduct a review regarding the State Department's employees' use of personal emails for official purposes. The members of Congress requested that the State IG coordinate with the Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General to determine whether classified information was transmitted or received by State Department employees over personal systems. Following this request, the ICIG reviewed 296 of the 30,490 emails that former Secretary Clinton's attorneys had provided to the State Department and determined that at least 2 of these emails contained classified information. We keep hearing that, at least 2. The 296 emails, including the 2 determined to contain classified information, had already been publicly released by State Department FOIA officials. In a June 24, 2015 letter, Kendall told the State IG and the ICIG that a copy of the 30,490 emails provided by former Secretary Clinton to the State Department was stored on a thumb drive in his law office, and that her personal server was in the custody of the company Platte River Networks. Again, go to HA's books to read up on Platte River, and there was another one I forget now, but she had 2 companies running her data. That may come up later. Based on this information, the ICIG concluded that the thumb drive and personal server contain classified information and are not currently in the government's possession, unquote. On July 26, 2015, the ICIG made a referral to the FBI pursuant to Section 811C of the Intelligence Authorization Act of fiscal year 1995, otherwise known as an 811 referral. This provision requires executive branch departments and agencies to advise the FBI immediately of any information, regardless of its origin, which indicates that classified information is being or may have been disclosed in an unauthorized manner to a foreign power or an agent of a foreign power, unquote, and is typically used to refer to the FBI a loss or unauthorized disclosure of any classified information. The ICIG referred the matter to the FBI, quote, for any action you deem appropriate, unquote. FBI's decision to open a criminal investigation. On July 10, 2015, the FBI Counterintelligence Division opened a criminal investigation in response to the 811 referral from the ICIG. Now, this has happened after all the email deletions. Although only a small percentage of 811 referrals result in criminal investigations, witnesses told the OIG that a criminal investigation was necessary to determine the extent of classified information on former Secretary Clinton's private server and who was responsible for introducing the information into an unclassified system and why it was placed there. The FBI gave the investigation the code name Midyear Exam, choosing it from a list of randomly generated names. The FBI predicated the opening of the investigation on the possible compromise of highly sensitive, classified, secure, compartmented information. One of the Midyear case agents told us that the Midyear investigative team was focused at the outset on the, quote, potential unauthorized storage of classified information on an unauthorized system and then where it might have gotten from there, unquote. A department prosecutor assigned to the investigation similarly described the scope of the investigation as, quote, related to the email systems used by Secretary Clinton and whether on her private email server there are individuals who improperly retained or transmitted classified information, unquote. The FBI designated the Midyear investigation as a sensitive investigative matter. According to the DIOG, a SIM includes, quote, an investigative matter involving the activities of a domestic public official or domestic political candidate involving corruption or a threat to the national security, unquote, as well as, quote, any matter which, in the judgment of the official authorizing an assessment, should be brought to the attention of FBI headquarters and other DOJ officials, unquote. FBI witnesses told us that the SIM designation is typically given to investigations involving sensitive categories of persons, such as attorneys, judges, clergy, journalists, and politicians, and that SIM investigations are overseen more closely by FBI management and the FBI Office of General Counsel than other investigations. The Midyear investigation was opened with an unknown subject, unsub, and at no time during the investigation was any individual identified by the FBI as a subject or target of the investigation, including former Secretary Clinton. FBI witnesses told us that the unsub designation is common and means that the FBI has not identified a specific target or subject at the outset of an investigation. According to FBI witnesses, this allowed the FBI to expand the focus of the investigation based on the evidence without being, quote, locked into a particular subject, unquote. With respect to the Midyear investigation, witnesses told the OIG that the FBI did not identify anyone as a subject or target during the investigation because it was unclear how the classified material had been introduced to the server and who was responsible for improperly placing it there. See, it wasn't even a cut and dry, this is how you move data from a classified server to an unclassified private email server and use private email addresses. They didn't know how it was done. So it wasn't just out of convenience, obviously. Despite the unsub designation, witnesses told us that a primary focus of the Midyear investigation was on former Secretary Clinton's intent in setting up and using her private email server. As an FBI OCG attorney assigned to the Midyear team, known as FBI Attorney 1, told the OIG, quote, we certainly started looking more closely at the secretary because they were her emails, unquote. Randall Coleman, the former assistant director of the counterintelligence unit, stated, quote, I don't know why that was the case, why it was an unsub. I'm really shocked that it would have stayed that way because certainly the investigation started really kind of getting more focused, unquote. In his OIG interview, Comey described former Secretary Clinton as the subject of the Midyear investigation and stated that he was unaware that the investigation had an unsub designation. Similarly, in his book, Comey referred to former Secretary Clinton as the subject of the mid-year investigation, stating that one question the investigators sought to answer was what Clinton was thinking, quote, when she mishandled that classified information, unquote. Initial briefing for the department. On July 23, 2015, Coleman and then Deputy Director Mark S. apostrophe, met with Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates and Associate Deputy Attorney General Let's start over. On July 23, 2015, Coleman and then Deputy Director Mark S. met with Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates and Associate Deputy Attorney General Matt Axelrod to brief them on the opening of the mid-year investigation. According to Coleman, he and Giuliano told Yates and Axelrod why the mid-year investigation was opened and laid out their vision of how the investigation would be conducted, including that the FBI planned to run the investigation out of headquarters. Yates recalled being briefed by Giuliano and Coleman at the beginning of the mid-year investigation, but said that she did not recall having concerns about the information they presented at the meeting or remembering anything significant about it. Right. Axelrod told the OIG that Giuliano and Coleman showed them a copy of the 811 referral that the FBI had received, and neither showed them or told them about some of the emails that had been identified as potentially classified. Axelrod stated that, my recollection is that the way they explained it was that review of the certain emails contained on the personal server that Secretary Clinton had been using showed that some of those emails contained classified information. And one of the things that was sort of standard practice when there was classified information on non-classified systems was that a review needed to be done to sort of contain I think the word they used in the intelligence community is a spill, the spill of classified information out into a sort of a non-classified arena. And so that they needed to, this was a referral so that the Bureau could help contain the spill and identify if there was classified material on non-classified systems so that the classified information could be contained and either, destroyed or returned to proper information handling mechanisms. Why destroyed? I'm sure they have a reason, but it just doesn't strike me as obvious at the moment. The prosecutors and career department staff assigned to the mid-year investigation told us that they considered it a criminal investigation from early on. Assistant Attorney General George Taskas, who was the most senior career department official involved in the daily supervision of the investigation, told us that he approached it as a criminal investigation from the beginning of NSD's involvement. Prosecutors 1 and 2, both of whom were assigned to the investigation by late July 2015, understood that it was a criminal investigation from very early in the investigation. Prosecutor 1 told us, pretty quickly, this seemed like a criminal investigation. It looked, and it smelled like a criminal investigation to me. Staffing the mid-year investigation and FBI staffing. The mid-year investigation was conducted by the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. For the first few weeks, the investigation was staffed by FBI headquarters personnel and temporary duty assignment FBI agents. Thereafter, FBI management decided to run the investigation as a special, quote-unquote, out of FBI headquarters. This meant that the investigation was staffed by counterintelligence agents and analysts from the FBI Washington field office who were temporarily located to headquarters and received support from headquarters personnel. FBI management selected WFO personnel based on WFO's geographic proximity to headquarters and its experience conducting sensitive counterintelligence operations. FBI witnesses told us that previous sensitive investigations had also been run as quote-unquote specials, and that this allowed FBI senior executives to exercise tighter control over the investigation. Excuse me. Oh, that's good. There were approximately 15 agents analysts, computer specialists, and forensic accountants assigned on a full-time basis to the Midyear team, as well as other FBI staff who provided periodic support. 4 WFO agents served as the Midyear case agents and reported to a WFO supervisory special agent. Several FBI witnesses told the SSA described the SSA as an experienced and aggressive agent, and the SSA told us that he selected, quote, the 4 strongest agents, unquote, from his WFO squad to be on the Midyear team. The SSA reported to Peter Strzok, who was then an assistant special agent in charge at WFO. Comey and Coleman told us that Strzok was selected to lead the Midyear investigative team because he was one of the most experienced and highly regarded counterintelligence investigators within the FBI. There were also several analysts on the Midyear team. Some analysts assigned to Midyear were on the review team, which reviewed and analyzed former Secretary Clinton's emails. These analysts reported to a supervisory intelligence analyst, who in turn reported to the lead analyst. FBI witnesses, including Coleman, told us that the lead analyst was highly regarded within the FBI and very experienced in counterintelligence investigations. Other analysts were on the investigative team, which assisted the agents with interview preparation and perform other investigative tasks. These analysts reported to the SSA and Strzok, in addition to reporting directly to the lead analyst. Several analysts were on both the review and investigative teams. Until approximately the end of 2015, the lead analyst and Strzok both reported to a section chief in the counterintelligence division, who in turn reported to Coleman for purposes of the Midyear investigation. The remainder of the reporting chain was as follows: Coleman to John Giacalone, who was executive assistant director of the National Security Branch, Giacalone to D.D. Giuliano, and D.D. Giuliano to Director Comey. During the course of the investigation, some FBI officials involved with the Midyear investigation retired or changed positions. In late 2015, Coleman became the EAD of the FBI Criminal Cyber Response and Service Branch, Criminal Cyber Response and Service Branch, and was no longer involved in the Midyear investigation. At the same time, EW Bill Priestap replaced Coleman as AD of the Counterintelligence Division. EAD Giacalone and D.D. Giuliano retired from the FBI in early 2016 and were replaced by Michael Steinbach and Andrew McCabe, respectively. In addition, Lisa Page, who was special counsel to McCabe, became involved in the Midyear investigation after McCabe became the deputy director in February 2016. Page told the OIG that part of her function was to serve as a liaison between the Midyear team and McCabe. Page acknowledged that her role upset senior FBI officials, but told the OIG that McCabe relied on her to ensure that he had the information he needed to make decisions without it being filtered through multiple layers of management. So in other words, he broke protocol. Several witnesses told the OIG that Page circumvented the official chain of command and that Strzok communicated important Midyear case information to her and thus to McCabe without Priestap's or Steinbach's knowledge. McCabe also said that he was aware of complaints about Page and that he valued her ability to quote-unquote spot issues and bring them to his attention when others did not do so. The FBI Office of Attorney General the FBI Office of General Counsel assigned FBI Attorney 1, who was a supervisory attorney in the National Security and Cyber Law Branch, to provide legal support to the Midyear team. A second, more junior attorney was also assigned to the Midyear team. FBI Attorney 1 reported to Deputy General Counsel Tricia Anderson, who in turn reported to then General Counsel James Baker. Figure 3.1 describes the FBI chain of command for the Midyear investigation. This figure does not include intervening supervisors who had limited involvement in the investigation. I'm probably going to leave that section of the report up to y'all. It would be kind of silly for me to describe diagrams, but I'm going by my gut here. Oh, it's right there. That was easy. Department staffing. Within the department, the mid-year investigation was primarily handled by the Counterintelligence and Export Control section of the National Security Division, with support from 2 prosecutors in the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia. All of the prosecutors assigned to the mid-year team had significant experience handling national security investigations or white-collar criminal cases. The lead prosecutor was a supervisory attorney in CES. Prosecutor 1 told us that he selected the best, quote-unquote best, non-supervisory line attorney within CES, Prosecutor 2, to handle the mid-year investigation with him. The 2 CES prosecutors reported directly to the chief of CES, David Loffman, who in turn reported to DAAG George Toscas. Toscas was the highest level career department employee involved in the mid-year investigation, and the prosecutors and supervisors below him who were involved in the mid-year investigation were also career employees. As described in more detail below, department officials above Toscas, including then Attorney General AAG John Carlin, Axelrod, Yates, and Lynch, received briefings about the mid-year investigation but were not involved in its day-to-day management. In August 2015, EDVA was brought into the mid-year investigation. EDVA assigned 2 supervisory attorneys to work with CES prosecutors, Prosecutor 3 and Prosecutor 4. The role of the EDVA prosecutors initially was to facilitate the issuance of legal process, including grand jury subpoenas, search warrants, and 2703D orders. However, the NSD prosecutors told the OIG that ultimately they consulted and worked closely with the EDVA prosecutors on many issues and decisions throughout the course of mid-year. Prosecutor 3 similarly told us that as the investigation progressed, he and Prosecutor 4 were considered quote-unquote equal partners with the NSD prosecutors. EDVA senior leadership, including then U.S. Attorney Dana Buente, received briefings on the mid-year investigation from the EDVA prosecutors and were informed of significant developments, but they were not involved in investigative decisions. Axelrod told the OIG that he recalled that he spoke to Buente early in the mid-year investigation and, quote, let them know that this was an NSD's investigation, unquote. Axelrod stated, sometime when you have a U.S. Attorney's Office and a main justice component, things have to go up 2 chains, and that's cumbersome. In an investigation like this, we figured it was easier just to have everything centralized in NSD. There's a reason why NSD has the ticket on, all these matters, right? They're the subject matter experts. Axelrod explained that NSD has primary responsibility for counterterrorism and counterintelligence cases, not only because it has subject matter expertise in those areas, but also because those cases are nationwide. He stated that there are certain areas of law where it is important to ensure nationwide consistency in how the law is applied, because, quote, if one district does something really different than another district, it can have very bad ramifications or consequences, unquote. As noted previously, the USAM requires NSD to expressly approve in advance charges involving certain national security statutes, including those that were considered in this investigation. Prosecutor 2 stated that NSD's typical role varies from case to case and depends on the resources and experiences of the specific U.S. Attorney's Office. This prosecutor told the OIG that NSD typically drives counterintelligence cases, but that its role runs the gamut from taking the lead on cases to playing a supporting role. Prosecutor 2 stated that EDVA has been more willing to allow NSD attorneys to play an active role in charged cases and is, quote, very open to NSD's partnership and support, unquote. Prosecutor 3 similarly told the OIG that EDVA's supporting role in the mid-year investigation was unusual, but he attributed this to logistics. This prosecutor stated, Prosecutors 1 and 2 were right across the street from FBI headquarters. It was pretty work-intensive, more so for them because they would have to go over the top there at the drop of a hat for meetings. We were always kept in the loop of what was going on, but the FBI kept a pretty tight hold of the classified documents, unquote. Prosecutor 3 also said that running the case out of NSD, supervised by Toscas, allowed the department to keep, quote, one central location of control by a career person over the investigation, unquote. Several witnesses told us that the FBI was frustrated at the perceived slow pace of bringing a U.S. Attorney's Office into the mid-year investigation. However, Toscas told us that it is not unusual for a U.S. Attorney's Office not to be involved in the beginning of an investigation, and that it took some time to determine the proper venue and select the most appropriate U.S. Attorney's Office. Prosecutor 1 told us that although the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District Court of Columbia also was considered, EDVA was selected in part based on the good historical working relationship between NSD and EDVA. Puente told the OIG that he expressed concerns that EDVA was not the appropriate district given that former Secretary Clinton lived in New York. He said that they potentially could establish venue through an email server or a victim agency server located in EDVA, but that it would be unusual to select venue to prosecute a high profile public figure on that basis. Puente said that while no one explained why the department chose EDVA, he assumed that it was because, quote, we move quicker and can do things a lot quicker than some districts can, unquote. Role of senior FBI and department leadership in the investigation, FBI leadership. The mid-year investigation was closely supervised by FBI leadership from the outset. Comey told the OIG that he received frequent briefings on the mid-year investigation. Quote, and then, once it got underway, either in July or maybe in August 2015, I told them that I wanted to be briefed on it on a much more frequent basis than I would normally on a case because I was keen to make sure that they had the resources they need and that that I could support them in any way. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. That I could support them if they needed additional things and protect them in the event anybody outside of the investigative team tried to monkey with them in any way or exert pressure on them or anything like that. Because I could see immediately how significant the matter was. So I think they got into a rhythm of briefing me maybe every couple of weeks, unquote. Comey said that the briefings took place roughly every 2 to 3 weeks at the beginning of the investigation and occurred on a weekly basis as the investigation progressed. Comey said that the mid-year briefings typically were attended by a core team of senior officials. They were Deputy Director Giuliano and then McCabe, Comey's Chief of Staff, James Rybecki, FBI OGC personnel including Baker, Anderson, and FBI Attorney 1, the EAD of the National Security Branch, Giacalone, then Steinbach, the AD of the Counterintelligence Division, Coleman, then Priestap, the AG of the Counterintelligence Division, the EAD of the National Security Branch, Giacalone, then Steinbach, the AD of the Counterintelligence Division, Coleman, then Priestap, Deputy Director McCabe's legal counsel, Lisa Page, beginning in February 2016, and Strzok and the lead analyst. Other FBI officials periodically attended these briefings, including then Associate Deputy Director David Bowditch, I'll go with Bowditch, after his appointment in April 2016, but witnesses told us that briefings were carefully controlled and limited to a select group of senior FBI managers. Comey said that the mid-year team typically produced a biweekly or weekly written summary of their progress in the investigation, and that briefings generally focused on what the team had completed and what needed to be done. Comey stated, quote, the way it tended to break down is the lead analyst would talk about exploitation of media and sorting through emails and things, and Pete Strzok would focus on investigative steps, interviews, and things like that, unquote. Comey told the OIG, it would be typically here in the director's conference room at the table, and they would give me a progress report on where they were at and on where they were, and I would typically ask the questions that were rooted in my interest in it to begin with, which is, do you have the resources you need? Any problems that I can help you with? I just felt the need to stay close to it. As described in more detail in Chapter 6, The same officials were involved in discussions about whether to do a public statement announcing the closing of the mid-year investigation. Comey characterized these discussions as great family conversations, stating that he was a great believer in oppositional argument and encouraged people to bring up different points of view. In addition to the mid-year specific meetings, Comey and the deputy director, first Giuliano, then McCabe, had daily morning and late afternoon meetings about significant developments or issues that were impacting the FBI. The mid-year investigation was sometimes discussed immediately following these meetings in a, quote, sidebar, unquote, meetings involving a smaller group of participants due to the sensitivity of the investigation. As a result of these frequent briefings, Comey and McCabe knew about and were involved in significant investigative decisions. McCabe stated, Comey relied on me for kind of my advice and recommendation on those decisions, but he was very involved in the decisions on mid-year, not decisions like what time is the interview with John Jones going to take place tomorrow, but we think we should serve a subpoena on so-and-so for these records, and the Department of Justice is saying, no, we want to try to work it out with a letter. And so, as that conflict was brewing, he would learn about it and weigh in on it and not necessarily decide it, but he was up to speed on all of the kind of significant things that were happening in the case. McCabe told the OIG that although Strzok and Priestap made the day-to-day investigative decisions, he and Comey were informed about any problems that arose during the investigation, as well as any significant information that the team discovered. As described in more detail in Chapter 5, our review found examples where Comey or McCabe approved or directed specific investigation decisions. These included directing the mid-year agents to deliver a preamble at the first interview of Cheryl Mills about the need to answer questions about the process used to call former Secretary Clinton's personal and work-related emails without informing the prosecutors, authorizing Baker to contact Beth Wilkinson, counsel to Mills and Samuelson, again without telling the prosecutors, approving the consent and immunity agreements used to obtain the Mills and Samuelson laptops, and not prohibiting Mills and Samuelson from attending the interview of former Secretary Clinton as her counsel. So again, they are part of the investigation, yet they allow them to be counsel. Department leadership. Unlike the FBI's senior leadership, senior department officials played a more limited role in the mid-year investigation. Although Lynch, Yates, Axelrod, and Carlin described making a conscious decision to allow the career staff to handle the mid-year investigation with minimal involvement by political appointees, they also told us that their involvement was consistent with their normal role in criminal investigations. Regarding Lynch. Lynch told the OIG that she received limited briefings on the mid-year investigation. She explained that the mid-year investigation was not discussed at her morning meetings or staff meetings because it was a sensitive matter and involved potentially classified information. Lynch said that she had a monthly meeting with NSD and that although the mid-year investigation was too sensitive to discuss during that meeting, afterward the people would quote-unquote skinny down to discuss sensitive cases among a smaller group of people that included Yates, Axelrod, Carlin, Toscas, and sometimes members of her staff. She said that the cases discussed among this smaller group included not only the mid-year investigation, but also sensitive counterterrorism and classified cases. Lynch said that she understood that there were political sensitivities inherent in the mid-year investigation, and she wanted to protect the mid-year team from perceived pressure from department leadership. She stated, because we knew that it was going to be scrutinized, we wanted to make sure that not only was the team supported, but they also were insulated from a lot of people talking about it and just discussing it in general throughout the office. And so, my view is that unless you need me for something, you know, I don't want to be on top of the team for this. They should work as they always work. They should know that they have whatever they need to have, whatever resources they need to get. But the front office is not, breathing down their necks on this. Asked whether there was ever a conscious decision by the political appointees to step back and allow the career appointees to handle the investigation, Lynch replied, "Certainly it was my view, and I can't recall having discussions about that, but that was how I viewed the setup, was that we wanted to make sure that this was always handled by the career people, and that essentially, even though they would need input, and certainly toward the end of anything, you'd have to make certain decisions, but not to have, at least certainly from the fifth floor level where I was, not to have that kind of input early on, although I typically wouldn't have had input in the inner workings of an investigation." Lynch said that Tauskas was the most senior career department official involved in making decisions about the mid-year investigation, and that she had faith and confidence in his ability to handle the case. Lynch explained that she was not involved in the day-to-day investigative decisions about how to staff the investigation, what witnesses to interview, or any of the other, quote, things that she used to do as a line assistant U.S. attorney, unquote. Nor did she intervene in conflicts between the prosecutors and agents. She told the OIG that this was not unique to the mid-year investigation, but rather represented her standard practice, stating, "My view is that, whoever it is leading the team needs to deal with that initially because they've got to keep working with each other. And based on my experience as an AUSA, if you can resolve it at that level first, you will have a team that is more solid and can work together more easily. If not, then I think the next level supervisor has got to be involved in that. My view is that the chain of command is set up. My view is that the chain of command is there for that reason. But I wouldn't, if someone said to me the agents want to interview this person and the prosecutors don't, my first question before I got involved would be to say, what do the supervisors think? Because if I, as AG, or even as U.S. Attorney, immediately step in and make that decision, then what I've done may have solved a problem, but I've cut the knees off of every supervisor in between me and them, and that creates bigger problems down the road." Lynch said her view was that problems or conflicts should not be elevated to the Attorney General unless the parties had exhausted all other remedies. Yates and Axelrod. Yates told the OIG that although department leadership understood the significance of the mid-year investigation, they agreed it should be handled like any other case. She said that the role of department leadership in the mid-year investigation represented their normal approach to criminal investigations, stating, "Look, we got the sensitivity of this matter obviously even from the beginning, and I remember we wanted to make certain that NSD had all the resources that they needed, that they were on top of it. That we stayed briefed on what was going on, but from the very beginning, it was important to us for this to be handled like any other case, and would be handled. That we stayed briefed on what was going on, but from the very beginning, it was important to us for this to be handled like any other case would be handled. That we wanted to make sure that the line prosecutors and lawyers who were doing this, didn't feel like they had the leadership office breathing down their neck, because that's what's going to put a layer of pressure on them that is not appropriate, we felt like here. So it was important to us for NSD to be handling the day-to-day aspects of this. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that they were getting what they needed, and that we were staying apprised of significant developments in it. Not only doing it the right way, but making sure that we did this, that it had the appearance of doing it the right way, too. And public confidence was going to be important. We knew that from the very beginning, and that we wanted to make sure that we had a process in place that was going to be the right process, and that would be for NSD to handle the day-to-day aspects of it. And so we had that conversation. You know, the DAG's office is really sort of more the operational one between the two leadership offices. And so I certainly had conversations with the AG about how we set this up, and we're running it. But again, there was no real dispute with anybody about this. This seemed like natural and right way to do things. two glasses here. I keep mixing them up. Asked whether her role in the mid-year investigation differed at all from her usual processes, Yates replied, "Every other case is not on the radar screen of the DAG, obviously, but this was a significant matter for the department that was one of those small handful of cases that how you do it can be defining for the Department of Justice. And we were very aware of that from the very beginning. So when I say we were handling it like any other case, what I mean is that we wanted to ensure that the factors that went into a decision about how we should proceed in that matter and how the kind of latitude that the line people were handling had to do it in that matter, that should be done like any other case. Nobody should get any special treatment. Nobody should be treated more harshly because of who they were. That's what I mean. It should be like any other case. But we weren't stupid. I mean, we recognized that the profile and import of this matter was such that we needed to make sure things were done correctly." Yates explained that the DAG typically gets involved in an investigation from a decision-making standpoint if there is disagreement between one of the department's litigating components and another government agency, or between a department's component and the U.S. Attorney's Office, or if there is real uncertainty about whether to take a potential investigative step. She stated, "Normally the DAG's office is not running an investigation, and we weren't running this one." Yates told the OIG that she received more frequent updates on the mid-year investigation than she did on other cases. Attributing this to the profile and time sensitivity of the investigation. Yates told the OIG that it was hard to generalize how frequently she received updates, but that she had regular meetings with NSD every other week. Although the mid-year investigation was not discussed with the larger group present during these meetings, afterwards they would skinny down, quote unquote, to a smaller group to discuss sensitive matters, including the mid-year investigation. The smaller group included Carlin, Toscas, and Mary McCord, who was at the time the principal DAAG in NSD. Yates said that she also participated in Lynch's regular meetings with NSD, which would similarly skinny down at the end. The NSD and EDVA prosecutors told the OIG that they were concerned at various points during the mid-year investigation that there was a disparity between the involvement of department and FBI leadership in discussions about investigative steps. For example, while McCabe, the second in command at the FBI, attended meetings at which the mid-year agents and prosecutors debated whether and how to obtain the Mills and Samuelson laptops, the highest-ranking official representing the department's position at those meetings was Toscas. Asked whether she was informed of these concerns, Yates told the OIG that she was not. She said that she was not aware that McCabe attended meetings with the mid-year prosecutors, nor did she know that Comey was closely involved in the investigation. Yates stated that she spoke to McCabe regularly about various issues and that she thought he was, quote, relaxed enough, unquote, with her to tell her that she needed to be at any meetings. Yates said that any disparity resulted from the unusually high level of involvement by FBI leadership, not a decreased role by department leadership. Axelrod similarly told the OIG that at the outset of the mid-year investigation, senior department officials, quote, made efforts to set up a structure that would maintain the integrity of this matter, unquote. He explained that they were aware that no matter how the investigation turned out, there was likely to be criticism at the end. You got that right. As a result, he said, they considered it, quote, extra important to make sure things were done by the book, following procedures, making sure that when people criticized whatever outcome was that we'd been able to say no to, wow, I screwed that up. Making sure that when people criticized whatever the outcome was that we'd be able to say no, this was done straight down the middle on the facts and on the law. These people do not talk in proper syntax. That's why I'm having a hard time reading these things. They really jumble up. So I forgive all the mistakes, but honestly, sit down and try to read these, and I think you'll have just as much trouble as I am. Axelrod said that he met with Toscas at the outset of the investigation and explained that Toscas would be the primary supervisor over the investigation. Axelrod stated, "We were going to have sort of a lighter touch from the leadership offices than we might on a sort of high-profile case. In other words, we were there for him for whatever he needed. But we weren't going to be sort of checking in day to day or week to week for updates or briefings. When something significant happened that we needed to know about, he would let us know." And when I say a lighter touch, I don't mean that folks weren't engaged or paying attention. Not at all. I just mean we wanted to give them the space they needed to do whatever they thought necessary in the investigation. So that, at the end, I just wanted to make sure that any allegation that there was some sort of political interference with this investigation wouldn't hold water. Axelrod told the OIG that the difference between the role of department leadership in the Midyear investigation and the typical high-profile investigation was just a matter of degree. He said that he and Yates relied on Toscas to bring issues to their attention at skinny down sessions following the biweekly meetings with NSD, but that, quote, "it wasn't us saying okay, and what's the latest on the email investigation," unquote, regarding Carlin. Carlin told the OIG that NSD's standard practice is for cases to be handled by the career staff, supervised by a DAAG. He said that at the beginning of the Midyear investigation, he held a meeting with McCord, Toscas, and the NSD prosecutors in which he emphasized the need to, quote, "go more by the book," unquote, and to follow the normal procedure. Carlin said that he wanted one person in the NSD front office to be in charge of the Midyear investigation and that he chose Toscas based on his historical expertise with investigations involving, quote, "espionage, the straight-up spy cases, and the leak mishandling type portfolio," unquote. Excuse me, I have to shift. Thank you. Sorry for the squeaky chair. It's old. Carlin said that he preferred having one person who was clearly accountable and in charge. He stated, "I tend to like that as former career person, I knew what it felt like when you're in one of those spots. So in general, I prefer that type of structure. In this case, I knew as well, at the end of the day, whatever decision was made in the case, it was going to be a high profile." But I'm not sure. I just set off Google. "In this case, I knew as well, at the end of the day, whatever decision was made in the case, it was going to be a high-profile, controversial decision. And so, you might need to explain later what process do we follow at the department. And so, I wanted to make that clear internally and to our partners that this was the process we were following at the National Security Division. And just seeing some other cases in my career that were high profile. They were handled in a way than was different than the norm. More people got involved in trying to make the day-to-day decisions. I didn't think that redounded to the benefit of the case, not just for appearance purposes, but it also created confusion and frustration among the relevant teams, and kind of inconsistencies in how they were staffed. Sometimes, when someone had a great idea later and came in over the top and changed the way they were approaching the case. So right from the beginning, I wanted to set it up and structure it that way. I felt pretty strongly about it." Carlin said that he discussed this with Lynch and Yates and made it clear to them that the team had the authority to make investigative and prosecutorial decisions. Carlin said that he told Lynch and Yates that, quote, like other sensitive matters, we would periodically update them," unquote. According to Carlin, Lynch and Yates knew that this was how Carlin was handling the investigation and supported this structure. Carlin said that he also explicitly communicated this to the FBI, explaining it to both Giacalone and McCabe. Investigative strategy. The Midyear team sought to determine whether any individuals were criminally liable under the laws prohibiting the mishandling of classified information, which are summarized in Chapter 2. To do so, the team employed an investigative strategy that included 3 primary lines of inquiry: collection an examination of the emails that traversed former Secretary Clinton's servers and other relevant evidence, interviews of relevant witnesses, and analysis of whether classified information was compromised by hostile cyber intrusions. Collection and examination of emails that traversed Clinton's servers and other relevant evidence. The Midyear team sought to collect and review any emails that traversed Clinton's servers during her tenure as Secretary of State, as well as other evidence that would be helpful to understand classified information contained in those emails. This included a review of the 30,490 work-related emails and attachments to those emails that former Secretary Clinton's attorneys had produced to the State Department. The team also attempted to recover or reconstruct the 31,830 emails that Clinton's attorneys determined were personal and did not produce to the State Department. As described above and in Chapter 5, before the Midyear investigation began, these emails had been deleted and wiped from former Secretary Clinton's then current server. The Midyear team also believed that some work-related emails could have been deleted from Clinton servers before her attorneys reviewed them for production to the State Department. Yeah, let's go with could have. Let's go with that. Let's shift this a little bit. It's kind of high. It's a little better. The team also I'm already through that. The Midyear investigators sought to recover and review deleted emails by obtaining and forensically analyzing, among other things, Clinton's servers and related equipment, other devices used by Clinton, such as Blackberries and cellular telephones, laptops and other devices that had been used to back up Clinton's emails from the server, and the laptops used by Clinton's attorneys to call her personal emails from her work-related emails. The team also obtained email content or other information from the official government or private email accounts of certain individuals who communicated with Clinton by email, originated the classified email chains that were ultimately forwarded to Clinton, or transferred Clinton's emails to other locations. As described in Chapter 5, the Midyear team did not seek to obtain every device or the contents of every email account that it had reason to believe a classified email traversed. Yeah, I can't wait to read that. Rather, the team focused the investigation on obtaining Clinton's servers and devices. Witnesses stated that, due to what they perceived to be systemic problems with handling classified information at the State Department, to expand the investigation beyond former Secretary Clinton's server systems and devices would have prolonged the investigation for years. They further stated that the State Department was the more appropriate agency to remediate the classified spills by its own employees. Analysts examined both the original 30,490 emails produced by former Secretary Clinton to the State Department and the emails recovered through other means to identify potentially classified information. Once the analysts identified information that they suspected to be classified, the team sought formal classification review from government agencies with equities in the information. These analysts also examined the emails for evidence of criminal intent. For example, they searched for classification markings to assess whether participants in classified email chains were on notice that the information contained in them was classified, statements by former Secretary Clinton or others indicating whether Clinton used private servers for the purpose of evading laws regarding the proper handling of federal records or classified information. No, I'm sure she wasn't doing any Clinton Foundation business whatsoever while she was secretary. Not one. Statements by former Secretary Clinton or others indicating whether they knew that emails contained information that was classified, even if they were not clearly marked, when they sent or received them on unauthorized systems. Evidence as to whether former Secretary Clinton or others forwarded classified information to persons without proper clearances or without the need to know about it, and documentation showing whether originators of classified emails had received classified information in properly marked documents before transferring the information to unclassified systems without markings. Witness interviews. The Midyear team told us that witness interviews covered several areas of investigative interest. First, the team interviewed individuals involved with setting up and administering former Secretary Clinton's servers to understand her intent in using private servers and to assess what measures they used to protect the servers from intrusion. These witnesses also helped FBI analysts understand the server structures to inform subsequent analysis. And additionally, they helped FBI investigators identify additional sources of evidence, such as devices containing backups of Clinton's emails. Second, the Midyear team interviewed individuals who introduced, transmitted, or received information on unauthorized systems, including the originators of classified information, Clinton's aides who forwarded the originators' emails to her, and Clinton herself. The originators included State Department employees and employees of other government agencies. The team interviewed these witnesses to, among other things, assess 1. Whether they believed the information contained in the emails was classified, how or from where they originally received the classified information, and whether, based on those circumstances, they should have known that the information contained in the emails was classified, and 3. Why they sent the information on unclassified systems. Third, the Midyear team interviewed individuals with knowledge of how and why 31,830 of former Secretary's emails were deleted from her servers and other locations. The team sought to assess whether Clinton or her attorneys deleted or directed the deletion of emails for an improper purpose, such as to avoid FOIA or Federal Records Act requirements. Well, she wasn't using a state.gov email address, so right there, she's broken the Federal Records Act requirements, as I said before. Fourth, the Midyear team interviewed State Department employees with knowledge of the State Department's policies and practices regarding federal records retention. The team sought to determine whether Clinton's use of a private server was sanctioned by the State Department, as well as what measures the State Department put in place to protect Clinton's private server from intrusion. Well, considering it was unencrypted for at least the first 3 months her server was up and running, I'd say they weren't really closely integrating with the State Department on that process. Intrusion analysis. The FBI also conducted intrusion analyses to determine whether any classified information had been compromised by domestic hostile actors or foreign adversaries. Agents and analysts specializing in forensics examined the servers, devices, and other evidence to access whether unauthorized actors had attempted to log into, scan, or otherwise gain access to the email accounts on the servers, and, if so, whether their efforts had been successful. They also examined various FBI data sets to assess whether emails containing classified information had been compromised. So, they examined her private email server, but they didn't examine the DNC servers, which are the basis of a part of the basis, at least, for the Mueller investigation. Okay. Chapter 4. Decision to publicly acknowledge the Midyear investigation in reaction to the White House statements about the investigation. In this chapter, we address the decision of the FBI and the Department to publicly acknowledge an investigation following the public referral from ICIG, including the allegation that former AG Lynch, instructed former Director Comey to refer to the Midyear investigation as a quote-unquote matter. We also discuss public statements by former President Barack Obama about the Midyear investigation, which raised concerns about White House influence on the investigation. Well, I'm sure he was completely hands-off. Because Obama let everybody do what they wanted with very little oversight. He was a real hands-off kind of president. As we describe in Chapter 6, Comey cited the events set forth in this chapter as two of the factors that influenced his decision to deliver a public statement announcing the closing of the Midyear investigation on July 5, 2016, without coordinating with the department. Public acknowledgement of the investigation, statements about the investigation in department, and FBI letters to Congress in August and September 2015. Following the public referral to the FBI from the ICIG in July 2015, the department and the FBI received questions from the media and Congress asking whether they had opened a criminal investigation of former Secretary Clinton. According to emails exchanged in late August 2015, there was a significant disagreement between ODAG and FBI officials regarding whether to acknowledge that a criminal investigation had been opened. FBI officials, according to the emails, wanted to acknowledge, quote, opening an investigation into the matter, unquote, while ODAG officials approved language, quote, neither confirming nor denying the existence of any ongoing investigation, unquote, based on long-standing department policy. FBI and department letters sent to Congress on August 27th and September 22nd, 2015, and a letter sent by the FBI General Counsel to the State Department on September 22nd, 2015, used the neither confirm nor deny language. Contemporaneous emails show that former Director Comey disagreed with this approach. In an August 27, 2015 email to Deputy Director Giuliano, Chief of Staff James Rybecki, and FBI Office of Public Affairs Assistant Director Mike Corton, he stated, quote, I'm thinking it a bit silly, there we go, to say we can't confirm or deny an investigation when there are public statements by former Secretary Clinton and others about the production of materials to us. I would rather be in a place where we can say, don't comment on our investigations, unquote. Rybecki told the OIG that Comey thought that the department and FBI needed to say more about the investigation because the ICIG referral was made publicly, and refusing to acknowledge an investigation would, quote, stretch any credibility the department has, unquote. Well, you took real good care of that, James. You and McCabe did an excellent job covering the FBI's confidence level by the public. I'm going to go another 15 minutes, and we'll take a quick break. I'll shove a little dinner down my throat, stretch my legs a bit. So again, we're going to go to 5 o'clock Central Time, and we'll break for probably more like 15 minutes that time. And we'll be back then at 5:15 Central Time. That'll give us all a chance to unplug our ears and stuff like that, get those headphones off. September 28, 2015 meeting between Attorney General Lynch and Director Comey. In late September and early October 2015, Comey and Lynch each had upcoming media and congressional appearances. Anticipating that they would be asked whether the department and FBI had opened an investigation into former Secretary Clinton, Comey asked to meet with Lynch to coordinate what they would say. Comey told the OIG that it was the first time the two of them would be asked questions about the investigation publicly, and he wanted to discuss how they should talk about it given that there had been news coverage of the referral and a lot of public discussion about that. The FBI is already looking into this. The meeting was held on September 28, 2015, and lasted approximately 15 minutes. Participants in the meeting included Lynch, Axelrod, and Toscas from the department, and Comey, Rybecki, and then D.D. Giuliano from the FBI. Comey's account of the meeting. Comey told the OIG that during this meeting, AG Lynch agreed they needed to confirm the existence of the investigation, but she said not to use the word investigation and instead call it a quote-unquote matter. Comey said that Lynch seemed slightly irritated at him when she said this, and that he took it as a direction. Comey stated, and I remember saying, well, what should I call it? And she said, call it a matter. And I said, why would I do that? And she said, I just want you to do that, and so I would very much appreciate it if you would not refer to it as an investigation. And the reason that gave me pause is, it was during a period of time which lasted where I knew from the open source that the Clinton campaign was keen not to use the word investigation. And so that one concerned me, and I remember getting a lump in my stomach and deciding at that moment, should I fight this or not? I don't know why there's not a question mark on the end of that. Comey told the OIG that he decided not to fight this instruction from the AG, but that, quote, it made his spider sense tingle, unquote. And we've heard these before, but it's so funny. And caused him, quote, worry that she's carrying water for the Clinton campaign, unquote. As described in Chapter 6, Comey told the OIG and testified before Congress that this instruction from Lynch was one of the factors that influenced his unilateral decision to make a public statement on July 5, 2016, without coordinating with the department. However, Comey also said to us that he had no other reason to question Lynch's motives at that time, stating, in fact, my experience with her has always been very good and independent, and she always struck me as an independent-minded person. Comey stated that one of the reasons he remembered this meeting so well was that Toscas made a comment after the meeting about the, quote, Federal Bureau of Matters. Indicating to Comey that Toscas, quote, had the same reaction to it I did, unquote. He said that Toscas did not say explicitly that he shared Comey's concerns about the meeting, but was, quote unquote, signaling agreement to him through, quote, body language and humor, unquote. I love that, Federal Bureau of Matters. I'm going to remember that. That's a watermark right there. Rybicki and Giuliano did not specifically recall the discussion that took place at the meeting, other than that A.G. Lynch told Comey to refer to the investigation as a matter. Giuliano stated, I don't remember that specific meeting. I do remember the topic, and I do remember thinking that A, it's ridiculous, and B, quite honestly, I didn't care what they called it. It wasn't going to change what we did, unquote. Okay, good, we're still running. He recalled discussions with the Midyear team after the meeting with Lynch, telling the OIG that a lot of people got wrapped around the axle about the issue and, quote, thought that that was kind of getting into the politics of the investigation, unquote. He also stated that Comey was, quote unquote, directly troubled by it. However, Rybicki said that he did not recall Comey being troubled by the meeting or expressing concern that the instruction from Lynch was an effort to coordinate with the Clinton campaign. Rybicki also said that he personally did not come away from the meeting with the view that Lynch was biased. Rybicki did recall Toscas joking about the Federal Bureau of Matters. Where are we at? Okay. Lynch's recollection of the meeting.